Alright guys, welcome back. I'm here, gonna give you some more updates on the DJI Digital FPV System. Before I made my last video, DJI gave us, some documentation about the system, but a lot of it wasn't exactly clear and there was some confusion. And so I wanna do a couple of things. Number one, I wanna clear up some of the points that I was confused on when I was making my first video. Number two, I wanna tell you an update on how I see me using it. And number three, why it is that I'm not switching over all of my stuff to DJI just yet. I don't know, maybe not ever, depending on how it continues to perform, right? So, number one, in the last video, some of you noticed, and some of you knew what it was when I didn't ahead of time, was the blurriness on the sides of the image in the goggle. That is caused by a feature known as focus mode. Now, in the documentation that was given to us prior to review, it just said focus mode provides a clearer image. Well, what focus mode actually does is it maintains a higher bit rate in the center section of the image, which is where most of the important information is. It shows you exactly what you're headed towards so that you can see that gap, while degrading the left and right sides of the image. Now that's going to be, I think that that's a particularly useful feature if we're just talking about using the FPV feed to navigate, to fly the craft. If you're trying to use that FPV feed for an HD output for live coverage of something, then that might not be the best option for you. And that brings me to my second point, is broadcast ability. Now, the documentation that I was given said that there was the ability to broadcast, which I took to mean that there was going to be a way to share the HD feed with, say, an event. If you're covering a concert, if you're covering a drift car event, if you're chasing motocross live at an event. And I was like, that's going to be a great application for this platform. However, broadcast mode, as it was mentioned in the documentation that I had, actually refers to the ability for other people who also have DJI FPV goggles to tune in and watch you. So that's a lot like what we have now with the analog system, where anybody can just tune into your feed and see it, which is awesome if you're at a gathering of a bunch of people that use DJI FPV goggles, but it's not so great if you're trying to share the video feed with an event like a drift car race or something. All right, so I've sent an email out to DJI to see if I can get some clarification, like maybe there's going to be a firmware update, or maybe there will be ability to output video over the USB-C cable, because USB-C, as you may know, is capable of carrying HD displays. You can run 5K monitors off of USB-C, so it's entirely possible that that's something that is coming down the pipe, but as of right now, I don't know of a way to do it. Now, another thing, if there is an update and I get an answer, I'll put it right here below, or in the description if it comes along after this video is out. Now, another thing that I asked is maybe there will be a standalone receiver for the DJI Digital FPV System, so that you could provide the event coordinators with their own receiver to receive the signal. Now, that would also, in my opinion, would be acceptable, mainly because I would be using this for commercial use and somebody would be paying me to use that, right? So, okay. There are a couple of big clarifications that I felt were due from my last video. Now, another thing from my last video is I wasn't entirely impressed with the penetration of this system. So today I've brought you guys to a location where there's tons of buildings over here. We're gonna fly on the backside of buildings. We're gonna fly down this hill. There's a bunch of different like stair-stepped lots with cool trees in between. It'll be a great thing to freestyle. And I'm gonna fly this area on both my Crossfire setup, that's a TBS Crossfire transmitter, and a Unify video transmitter. So I'm gonna do it on both my analog system and the DJI system, and we're gonna see how both of those hold up in a real-world environment where I would come to freestyle and record. Now, on top of that, I've also got a bunch of the Atlanta crews coming out today. I'm gonna put the system in the hands of AFPVWolf, my boy Mike here. I'm gonna put it in Skitzo's hands. Hopefully Tidwell will be out here, and anybody else that shows up, I'm gonna get them to fly it and give me what they think and let you guys hear what it is that they think about the system. I'm gonna play around a little bit with some of the saturation and contrast settings to see if I can't get a video output from the air unit itself that's a little bit more suited to color grading to get the specific image that I want in post-production, because I really wasn't happy with the output. If I was going to be recording and providing coverage, the current firmware that's on the DJI Digital FPV system, I don't think that it's not like my GoPro. That's just the bottom line. I like the GoPro footage better right now. That's not to say that there won't be firmware updates that improve it. That is entirely possible, and in fact I expect it. But we're going to show you what the current state of this system is today and put it in a bunch of people's hands. So let's go fly some packs. So I've decided to pull you back into the studio to talk about some of the issues with the DJI Digital FPV system as you explore the far reaches of its range. What happens when the signal starts to break down and degrade? Because it's something that I noticed in my initial tests, that it was an issue, but it's hard to say how big of an issue when you're only flying it for one day. And then also, I recorded this in the field with me talking to the camera while I was flying it, and I picked up on some of the issues in the field, but it wasn't really apparent until I got back here in the studio and started reviewing this footage. So I want to explain to you why it is that the DVR that you're seeing from some of these feeds doesn't look as bad as it actually is in real life. The bottom line is that when you're flying the DJI Digital FPV system and you're exploring the far reaches of the range, not only does it begin to pixelate, letting you know that the signal is degrading and you probably ought to get closer to yourself, but it also starts to get higher and higher latency. And now, it's a major issue because if you are flying with an analog system, you have a fixed amount of latency. Your brain kind of trains to that, and you know that you stop the roll this much early in order to actually land level. And so it takes some practice to build up that familiarity. But with a system where the latency is varying, in my tests, I saw as high as 300 milliseconds of latency in the goggle display before I had one where it totally froze and I fail safe, but I had forgotten to press record on that, so I don't actually have that footage. But in the ones where I was able to keep it in the air and it was recording, I saw latency as high as 300 milliseconds, and then as low as 28 milliseconds. That's a huge amount of variability. With analog systems, you do get some variability, but we're talking more in the range of between 20 and 50 milliseconds of latency. So what happens in the goggles when this latency starts to creep in? What happens is it will freeze frame for just a few milliseconds at a time in order for that digital signal processing to catch back up with the information that it's grabbing and keep providing you a feed. Now that's good in that it's not completely cutting out and you're crashing because of it, but it does cause some major issues. So when I was reviewing the footage the first time around and I saw the sections where I felt like it was grainy, it didn't look that way in the DVR footage, and I couldn't figure out why that was until I really pushed it to the limits the other day and started reviewing the DVR footage. Because what would happen in the goggles is it would freeze frame for a good little bit and then pick up again. But when you watch the DVR footage, it never shows that frozen frame. It records up to here, and then that frozen frame just gets erased, and so it jumps forward. So one really good way to demonstrate that is just showing you the varying lengths of clips. So if you look at the timeline here, this flight, the top file is the goggle view. That's the DVR recording, right? And the bottom file is the recording from the air unit. Now these two, this shows the time. The air unit recorded for 4 minutes, 10 seconds, and 10 frames. The goggle, 4 minutes, 10 seconds, and 9 frames. Now, this was a flight that Skitzo did where he stayed very close to himself, and that tells me that basically it dropped 1 frame. That might be a little variation in the start and stop time. I'm going to write that one off. But when you look at the flight that I did where I was really pushing the range of this system, look at this huge gap between the goggle file and the air unit file. The air unit file recorded for 2 minutes, 42 seconds, and 20 frames. The goggle recorded for 2 minutes, 28 seconds, and 15 frames. Now that is a total difference of what? 14 seconds of lost footage. That's huge. Now, I'm going to show you a section where this occurred at the... I'm not going to bore you with the whole flight because there's a ton of testing that's going on, but I want you to see on the right side of this image is the DVR, what is recorded on the goggles, not what I saw in real time. And on the left side is what is recorded in the air unit itself. Now, right off the bat, you can see that they're already a little bit off. They're synced at the very beginning, and when I take off, they're perfectly good, right? Now, you get to the section over here. I've already lost a frame or 3, and so it's a little bit off, but you're gonna see where it gets to the point where it was almost unflyable. I was surprised that I didn't just smash the whole system. I want you to watch the right side of the screen jump ahead, all right? So here we go. We're dipping down into this far thing, and boom, way ahead. Boom, way ahead again. It's already flipping over, and I haven't even gotten there. Way ahead again. Do you see that? Those were frozen frames where I'm losing all of that footage. I'm just looking at a frozen screen in the goggles. I wish that I had an accurate representation of what was seen while I was flying, but this system isn't recording an accurate representation of what I'm seeing at the far reaches. Now, it's... I don't know what to tell you guys other than these are... If you're flying in a very small field in front of yourself, it's going to perform great. If you are flying freestyle somewhere where you want to push to the limits in range way over here to way over here and connect it all in one line on one pack, it's going to be difficult on this system. I don't know how else to say that. Is the DJI Digital FPV System still something I want to test out? Yeah, I'm going to keep playing with this, but I want it to be apparent to everybody what exactly it is that we're working with here, okay? Watch, this is where I almost lost it as I was dipping back in and it froze, because right here on I completely pulled out of that dive without any FPV feed. If you watch the HD, I'm coming down. Now, there's no video. I'm just doing this blind. I'm like, oh God, and then it comes back about right there. Let's real quick, before we move on, I want to show you an analog view of of that same area. So this is me flying my Crossfire system. So this is the analog system dipping down behind the same row of trees. Now, this is a total of 4 rows of trees between me and the quad, as well as when you get that low, there's a little bit of earth between you and the quad. So this is far reaches for even the analog system. And you'll see here, as I come down, look, right there, that's pretty bad. You see, I basically lost video there and had to punch back out. But I knew I was level. I just gave it throttle and came back up. Now, I get in because I knew that I had seen some footage. As I dip down in here, what you're going to see is a ton of static. But what else can you see? I can still make out the horizon in real time. I can still see this tree that's on the right side of the screen coming up that I'm going to miss it. And I'm still able to fly through that gap in the trees and pop back up. Now, that's what I mean later on in this video when I'm talking to Mike about I can fly through static, but I can't fly through latency. I don't know what else to tell you guys. This is the results of my tests, and with that, I'm going to take it back into the field and let you guys hear Mike, AFPVWolf's reaction to flying it, and Skitzo's reaction to flying it. Yeah, just be aware that this is an issue with this system when you're pushing the range of it. Is it cool to fly in HD footage when you're flying somewhere and not pushing the boundaries? Very much so. Is this a platform that I would use for long range or pushing the boundaries of RF? Definitely not. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're deciding whether or not this is a system that you want to go with. And we'll go back to the field.
All right. Let's see what you think, bro.
I can see the little latency.
Yeah, it's got a little bit, and as soon as the video starts breaking up, it gets higher. And when I say breaking up, it just gets kind of lower resolution, kind of gets blocky.
Not bad.
No, not bad at all, right?
It actually looks like HD. Like full HD.
You notice how it kind of gets blurry on the sides first?
Yeah.
That's the focus mode. I'm gonna try turning that off later. I'm also gonna try and tweak it and see if I can't get a more color grade. Oh shit. Trimming the bushes.
I saw it like 1 second too late. Like it feels weird to try to do anything like gaps and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's on flight 1. It's kind of some janky motors. Like it's not, I don't know. I had a hard time putting it on my best gear because I don't, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to look good though. Like it looks pretty clear.
Dang. How's the balance on that radio?
Not bad. As far as me not ever flying this quad and not knowing what type of tune is on here or whatever.
Yep.
I'm used to the static, so when it flashes with static, you know, I guess that your signal's getting messed up. So when it's just like stuttering or it's delayed, it's not. And I don't know if it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah. Mike was saying that he likes the fact that, you know, you get a little bit of latency as it gets out there. And I was saying, I don't know. I think that's actually the big downside, because with the analog system, as you get near the end of what you can do, the static gets higher and higher in the video feed. But you know, I can still fly with a ton of static. If the way I think about it is for every pixel, think about like, you know, let's say there's 100 pixels. If one of them becomes staticky, then you're now at 99% of the image quality. If you have 80% of the screen static, I can still make out the horizon and keep flying it and probably get it back to me. Whereas with the this digital system, once that higher latency kicks in and it starts hitting the, you know, 200, 300, 900 milliseconds of latency, it's much more difficult in order to, like, I'll try to correct, say I'm in a bank and I want to correct, trying to stop at level is not as easy when you have high latency as it is when you just have high static levels. I can stop at level because I can see the horizon through the static, but I'll overshoot level if the latency is too high, is what I'm getting at. So I think it's harder to fly through higher latency than it is to fly through static. Now, no system is perfect, don't get me wrong. I definitely was at the limits of the analog system earlier, and I'm going to push it to its limits again. These are just observations, and I want to make sure that nobody's getting overly hyped on this system. While it's really cool and it's a really good advancement, like, I don't know anybody that's swapping over all of their quads at the pro level at this point in time yet. All right, let's go fly some more.
Try not to explode it.
Well, it's your rates, it's your fault.
Fair enough.
I'm just kidding.
And as you get further away and put stuff between you, it'll get kind of blocky, but as it gets blocky, it also will get higher latency. So just be aware. It's not like analog where the latency it is, you know, within 20 milliseconds it is. It can go as high as 300, 900.
So it kind of gets like the Netflix when it gets all pixel, like bigger pixels.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, like flying close into yourself, it's not that bad.
I'm kind of scared to go far away then.
I don't blame you.
Is this what you crashed earlier?
No, I crashed my other setup, but I have crashed this today. I fell safe behind the building.
All right. First things first, not a fan of this thing.
Yeah.
Traditional DJI radio. Gimbals actually feel surprisingly good. I am not a fan of the really narrow form factor. It just, I don't know. I guess maybe more for a thumb flyer. But apparently you don't have to have that, so who cares? This, don't like the form factor of this either.
Did you have a lot of light leak? I got a lot of light leak at the bottom.
I didn't
personally.
notice. I don't think it would be a problem for me.
Yeah.
But it might be. Maybe it fits my head. Okay.
I get a lot, but it's not like overbearing.
I've heard about the light. I've heard about the light leak problem, but I didn't notice it. Clarity was really, really good, but we kind of went back to the like box goggles. Yeah. And of course, this is new tech, so obviously this will probably get smaller over time. If this was like actual like goggle form factor, it would be pretty crazy. But I don't know. This is definitely a step in the right direction.
One of the things.
So up until now on the Air unit and the DJI system, I've been just recording it with the default settings at 1080p 60, not changing saturation or anything like that. I assume that there would have been a contrast control, but there's not. There's also not a sharpness control. So the only control that you actually have is the saturation. And the saturation offers settings 0 through 6. And at 0, it is literally black and white. At 6, it's super saturated. The default setting is 3 for saturation. So I did 2 flights, one at a saturation of 1 and one at a saturation of 2. And I just want to take a look at how those are going to look if I were to throw a LUT on it, for instance, right? Which is something that you would typically do for color grading. When I'm color grading my GoPro footage, I do a couple of different levels of correction, a LUT, and then some contrast and sharpness. And I'm going to do a video really soon, I've decided, on my GoPro settings, but I've wanted to for a while. It's just not happened. This is a flight on the DJI recorded on the Air unit with a saturation of 1. Now you can see the saturation is very low. Let's add in a custom LUT. All right, so we got a LUT. I'm just going to grab something from here. Oops. One that I use a lot is this dark. I'm using the CMG. Those are Christian Make Garbs LUTs. I use a combination of those in my filming. Now, actually, with that just turned down to 0.9, which is what I typically do, that doesn't look that bad. I felt like the footage I was getting at with the saturation turned down to 1 was going to be a bit muted, and it still is kind of muted. I'm going to just copy that and paste the attributes over here onto the one where it is at just is set to 2, which is 1 lower than standard. Without the LUT, it looks like this, which that looks a lot more like the flat setting on a GoPro. And when I throw the LUT on, yeah, that does, color-wise, that does not look bad at all. Let's see. Let me grab another one that I typically use, is this Midnight one. That looks much more like a color-graded GoPro footage clip. Now, it's still a little bit more choppy than I like. I like the smoothing that the GoPro brings to the field. I also miss out on my super view settings, but if we can get a 4.3 out of the camera, which I think is entirely possible because they're using a 4.3 sensor, if I understand the documentation correctly again, if we can get that 4.3 video, it's not that difficult to change it over into something that looks like super view. The other big downside to this all being rolled into one is if you turn your saturation down for recording, you also are turning your saturation down in the goggles. Now, there may be some goggle settings that are independent of the camera settings, so I can turn down the camera saturation and turn the goggle saturation settings up to kind of correct for that. That's going to require more testing, but in this first take look at trying to color grade the footage from the DJI platform, this is a lot better. Now, I've got some gunk on the lens. It's not perfect, and my stuff's never perfect. It's always just pretty good. I'm not hating entirely on the color gradability, and this is something that will be easily updatable from DJI in terms of giving us some contrast adjustments, and maybe some sharpness adjustments would also be nice, so that I can more dial in a like a great look for the color grade. Now, it's not bad by any means, but it still needs some work. So that's kind of my take on that section. I hope the information that I've brought you today, not only about the latency within the system, the range performance, the other people's first impressions, and a little bit of a look at trying to color grade the footage. You know, this is very much still a first look and very early on in the development of this platform. Now, with all of the downsides being stated, I want to say that it is a platform that I'm excited about. I think that there is a lot of possibilities for use, especially in a race where you're like right there in front of yourself, because as long as it's in the same, like, as long as there's no obstacles between you and the quad, the latency is pretty consistent, very similar to what we have with analog systems. And for a race where you're on a defined course and always fairly close to yourself, I think that we could have a winner on our hands and be able to output live HD footage to the audience, which is, quite frankly, a game changer. Now, it might just be that it's not exactly the platform that I'm looking for yet, but it could be the platform you're looking for, and I just want to make that clear. Don't forget to pre-order your Stingy V2 Forged Carbon Edition right now at xhover.com, link in the description. Save yourself $15 by getting in on that pre-order. Once they're in stock and shipping, the price is gonna go up to the full retail price, so I don't want you guys to miss out on that. Be sure to get in on that sweet deal, and we're gonna catch y'all next time. Hit that like, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'm gonna be coming back with more content real soon.